You have just as much a right as everybody else to be out there traveling. And don't ever let anybody think you don't.
Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Welcome to the podcast. This episode This episode is brought to you in part by Horizon Therapeutics. Sean, I have an update on my broken wheelchair.
Okay, I'm ready. We're all ready. We've been talking about this broken chair. Well, go ahead. What's the latest?
So last time we talked about this, you warned me not to consider it done because I hadn't received the check or the chair, and you were right. So the update is I have received the check.
Oh, nice.
And it did clear. It's in my account.
Oh,
so
good.
There we go. That part's done.
It's not a fake check.
The wheelchair did arrive, and the guy delivered it to my place, but it's the wrong size. There are 3 sizes for the wheel model CI, and there's a 16-inch, 18, and a 20. And my old one was a 16, and this one's an 18. And so right when he rolled it through the door, I noticed that it was wider than what I use.
Yeah.
And so I immediately saw that, and I was like, hey, what size is this? And he said it was 18. I was like, well, my old one's a 16. He's like, well, you've got a couple more inches. Like, you've got a little room on you. I'm like, no,
That's
this
not a good thing.
This is not
That's
a
not
good
a benefit.
thing. So anyway, the wheelchair is sitting in the corner of my condo, unused, because they're ordering. It's supposed to be here hopefully this coming week, but the 16 is on the way. So not done yet.
Yeah. No. Well, I'm glad you at least got the check, and it's obvious they're making progress.
Yeah.
You sharing that story reminds me when Global Repair replaced my walker or rollator, they sent me the wrong color. Mm-hmm. And, like, I'm kind of picky. I don't want a big, bright red walker.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they sent me. And I get it. Some people might love that. That is not my style. And the bummer is, I got it, and the box sat in my room for several days because I was using the old one without the net. Like, it wasn't I must use it today. And by the time I opened the box and realized it was red, I reached back out, and at first it was, a lot more colorful. Do you want to just keep that one? Nope. Nope, I don't. There's a reason. I didn't choose it in the first place, so it's kind of funny. Everybody's got a different perspective on why or the benefit of 2 inches or whatever it may be. So.
Well, and at some level, they're like, dude, we got you a new walker. Just be happy with that. And the thing is, you broke it.
Yeah.
Let's do this right.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember now having the conversation because I reached out and said, hey, a wrong color. And their response was, oh, the black and gray one, the one I have, is out of stock. So we chose this red one so you could have it now.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I appreciate the get it done mentality, but you just wasted a ton of money and time. Why don't you just email me? Hey, gray's out of stock. Do you want a red one? Totally. I would have said, no, I'm happy to wait a month or longer or whatever,
Yeah, why not just say, hey, what size do you want? Not just to order the 18-inch.
Just pick one that person liked or they thought was good enough. Well, again, I'm glad you at least got the check, and I'm hopeful they come through with the right size soon.
Yep, I think I'll be here soon. Well, Sean, we have a really engaging interview today on this very topic that we're talking about right now. But first, the following message comes from Horizon Therapeutics.
Our friends at Horizon Therapeutics, a global biotechnology company, are committed supporters of our work, and they aim to raise awareness and address the needs for people impacted by rare diseases. In 2017, they launched the #RareIs program, designed to elevate the voices, faces, and experiences of people living with rare diseases, as well as highlight programs and resources tailored to the rare disease community. Some of their signature programs include the RareIs Scholarship Fund, RareIs Global Advocate Grant, RareIs Playlist, RareIs Representation, and the RareIs Adoption Fund.
Sean, I'll tell you something. I've worked with the folks at Horizon Therapeutics for a while now, and I've had the opportunity to share my story on RareIs a few times. In fact, there's a new interview I just did. You should check it out. It's a great way to feel a sense of community in a safe, inclusive place. And for me, it was a chance to share my story, living with Friedreich's ataxia, and all my successes and challenges. I really encourage people to check out rareiscommunity.com for more information and, if comfortable, share their own story of their rare disease journey. Despite our different challenges in rare, there's so much that our stories can do to unite us.
I'm going to have to check that out, Kyle. At the very least, to see if you were any good in your interview. What'd you say that website is again?
Well, first of all, my interview is great. Thank you very much. And you'll find that and so much more at www.rareiscommunity.com.
Thanks, Kyle, and I hope to see stories from our listeners on #RareIs soon.
Today's conversation is with a dear friend who's a force for good because of the way she lives her life. She gave me advice and encouragement as I was dealing with all this stuff about the wheelchair and the airlines. Her experience and insight is invaluable, and so we wanted to bring her on. Please enjoy our conversation with Mary. Mary Caruso is a founding board member of the Friedreich's Ataxia Research Alliance. In fact, her kids, Alex and Sam, were in the very first FA clinical study. Maybe we'll hear a little about that. She was also on our crew for RAMP, supporting us across the country. And she's a big force in the FA and the disabilities communities. Mary, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Kyle. Wow, that was a lot.
Well, you are a legend to the FA world, and I'm so excited that you're on our screen today.
Well, thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
Tell us about, just briefly, about the very first FA clinical study. I've seen pictures. I remember one picture with Dr. Wilson, Dr. Lynch, and Alex and Sam.
Yeah, so that was actually even before the first clinical trial. That was when we first met Rob Wilson. We had just started going to CHOP, and they were doing this study on like a sort of a man-made, I think the spectroscopy, where they actually put tin foil on their, like foil on their legs. And wow. They rode a bike. Yeah, that was very interesting. And I mean, Sam was 9 or 10. So that means Alex was like about 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
So, you know, it's funny. We were just asked to come do this because there weren't a lot of people around that were known to have FA. So we got the calls all the time. But, and you don't even really know what you're being asked to do, but they just did it. And of course, it was from their perspective, it was an adventure. We went to Philly for the weekend, and we went to the hospital, and we met all these people. And in reality, they were giving them good data. So that was even separate. But they were, I think Sam was randomly chosen to be in the very first idebenone study at the NIH. Wow. So that was quite an experience. And that was many, many years ago.
Right, right. Tell us about Alex and Sam.
Sam, we just let him know yesterday that he's actually going to be 36. Wow. He thought he was turning 32.
Wow.
So he was a little bit upset about that. His birthday's in a couple weeks. They both lead very interesting lives, paralleled, but they're both very different people. Although people think they're twins just because they're both in wheelchairs, which is interesting. They're both working. Sam loves his job he works at the high school, helping with the school to work program. Alex works for an app for at-risk, unstably housed youth. Alex has her master's degree in social work, so that's, a passion of hers to help people. Sam received his degree in communications, really wanted to be a video editor. And I don't have to tell you, as he was progressing, it was harder and harder to do editing. So, but he's very happy with the job that he has. We try to advocate whenever we can and volunteer in the community. We have a very crazy household with a kind of a revolving door. There's an ongoing joke that you never know who's going to end up at the dinner table, which I love. I love, because to me, the more people around equates to the more support you're getting emotionally and more fun and, just making life interesting. So, I think we live a pretty good life.
Mary, where do you live? Where's home?
Small town in North Branford, Connecticut, which is about 10, 15 minutes from New Haven. It's a great little community. We have about 15,000 people in town. And we live in the renovated general store. So quite a few years ago, I purchased the original general store built in 1890. And at that time, we had a small shop that we ran. And it has apartments in it. So we have tenants and, we have the best people around. And, so that's it. I do like hobby gardening. I have a flower stand. I love to garden.
I mostly ask because I want to show up to the dinner table sometime.
Anytime.
I've had the pleasure of some baked goods from your house and other sundries, whether it's from Ram or specifically when I was in the hospital a couple years ago with the broken femur. You guys sent me a care package, and I know it. Even if you just order pizza, it's going to be the best pizza ever.
We make our own pizza, Sean.
Oh, I know it.
Thank you very much.
Well, anytime. We'll even pick you up at the airport.
Oh, too kind.
Mary, I asked you onto the podcast because a lot of our listeners know that I had an issue with my wheelchair on an airplane. What our listeners don't know is that you encouraged me to seek a reimbursement for the chair that I bought as a replacement. And it worked out. I did receive that reimbursement, and it wouldn't have happened without you. And subsequently, you gave me some encouragement and taught me a few things about advocating, specifically for airplane travel, but a few things just in general about advocating for yourself. So we specifically wanted to talk about the airplane part today. Can you introduce the topic from your perspective?
Sure. And I do want to start off by saying I'm in no way an expert. I don't work for the DOT. I don't, I could clearly give, misinformation by accident, but, here's my thing. We fly a lot because we refuse to not be out enjoying life. And I also fly a lot on my own. And what was astonishing to me is, especially as the years went on and Sam and Alex started using a wheelchair, is the difference between flying as an able-bodied person and flying as a person with a disability, which is an interesting perspective for our home because not everybody can have that dual perspective. So I started learning, and over the years have gained some insight on the help that's out there and how to get that help in a respectful, dignified manner. Yeah. Because, and I'll give you one small experience. There's so many.
Yeah.
Airlines are required to pre-board a person with disabilities if they self
identify.
So we always get to the airport. I'm a rule follower. So I've always been a rule follower.
I'm with you on that one.
Right? So when I make the reservations, I identify the needs. I re-identify the needs a month before we fly. Mm-hmm. I call again 2 weeks before. I can't talk to enough people. And we always get to the airport an hour and a half before our flight, domestic. We always get to the gate, and again, I self-identify. And there should always be an aisle chair, which is a chair used to transfer people who cannot independently transfer from their wheelchair into a seat, into an airplane seat. So we had done all that, and we waited, and we were at a very large airport, and I kept going up to the counter, and they kept saying, yes, the aisle chair is going to be here any second. And then all of a sudden they started boarding the plane without pre-boarding us. And it was also a large plane. So, I went right up to the desk and I said very nicely that we should have been pre-boarded. And now there's so many people in the jetway. And, when you're sitting in a wheelchair in a crowd of people, it can get very hectic and confusing. Yeah. So we were in this massive group of people, and we're getting down to the plane, and obviously they have to transfer both Sam and Alex. So they transfer Al into the transfer chair, bring her onto the plane. They come back, and the two people, the transfer people, come back and look at Sam and said, we have to transfer this mother load.
Oh, geez.
Oh, and that was just like so cruel and cruel and unkind. So, I stepped in and I said, geez, I'm sorry. Could I have your name? And she immediately turned her badge around. But I mean, Sam, as people should know, Sam has a very short fuse. Very short. So Sam immediately started to get upset. And you know what? That's how situations escalate, and then everybody's yelling at each other. And so, having done all my research, at that point, I knew that we had the right to ask for a CRO, which is a complaint resolution officer, who is trained in disability issues for the aircraft. So we asked for this woman. She came in, and it was a volatile scene because people were yelling at each other. And, I would imagine if I walked into that scene, I probably would have taken me a few minutes to get my bearings. But, once I had kept my cool and I had, stayed respectful to everyone. So after I got to explain to her what actually transpired, the first violation was not pre-boarding. Not having that aisle chair, that transfer chair ready. And then, the gate people were very abrupt with us. And I mean, the woman saying that, you can form your own opinion. It wasn't like any type of violation, but it was certainly an extremely disrespectful way to treat a person with disabilities. And I know for a fact she was reprimanded. And but I mean, that's how things can happen. So here's my thing, and I tell people all the time, because we do almost every time we fly with the wheelchairs, we encounter a problem. Either a wheelchair is broken or they don't pre-board. Those are the two biggest problems, and they happen almost all the time. So know when your rights have been violated and always stay respectful. I think that's the key. Many times when we step up and acknowledge that a violation has occurred, what happens is everything's overdone. The last time we flew, they flew a manager in from another state to meet us at the airport. And it was like this big to do, they came up, they introduced, they apologized, so on and so forth. And, I said to the manager, this is way more than you really needed to do. And what we always ask for is we all want to fly like everyone else. We don't want anybody flying in. We don't want anybody, don't apologize. Stop apologizing. We want the airlines to get it right.
Yeah, and stop doing it wrong.
Stop doing it wrong. And when you do it wrong, learn from the mistake and don't do it again. We don't want a lot of attention. We just want to fly quietly.
Without incident. Yeah.
Without incident, without people, looking, or I know when I get to fly by myself, nobody sees me. And it's not because of my height. It's because I blend in with everyone else. And, there should be a day where people with mobility impairments, whether it's a walker, cane, wheelchair, power chair, should also be able to blend in like everyone else and get the same service. A modification is a reasonable thing. Like, it's very reasonable to help someone in a wheelchair get on the plane first. I mean, that's reasonable. But other than that, we like to sit at the gate, mind our own business, drink a cup of coffee. But it seems to be so difficult.
The plane flight is merely what is getting you to what you want to do, to what your purpose is or whatever, right? And it's turned into this event, and it's like, no, it's just traveling. Let's just do this.
Traveling. Let's do what we have to do correctly. Follow the law, because there is an Air Carriers Access Act, and it spells out what the airline is supposed to do. If they were rule followers, it would go smoothly. But and do it in a dignified manner. And I think most people would appreciate that and acknowledge that they just want to get from point A to point B just like everyone else. Right. And let's try to achieve that, which is why I said to you, and I say all the time, if you go on, and I can give you links to the different, if you go on the DOT, on the Air Consumer Passengers page, you can file a complaint right then and there. If your chair's been damaged, if you weren't pre-boarded, if you were treated disrespectfully, and I feel like you have to do it. You owe it to the next person, because the more complaints that are filed, reasonable, dignified, and with merit, the more attention there will be and the better things will become. So that one day, nobody's going to see you. They're just going to see you as another passenger, just getting on the plane, going where you have to go, hoping that when you get to your destination, you have a wheelchair that works.
You encouraged me to file a complaint about mine just to have it on record, right? I haven't done that yet. So I'm going to put your link or the link that you give us. We're going to put it in the show notes. And I promise I will file my complaint to have it on record.
Yeah, I think you should. When we recently had a problem, it was a pre-boarding problem, and they started to pre-board us, and it was a plane with a ramp, so there wasn't a jetway. So we had to go across the tarmac to go onto a ramp, and we headed out, and the floodgates opened, and all the passengers came out. And, they were pushing. Sam was on the ramp already, getting ready to be transferred into the aisle chair. Al was still on the tarmac, and people were just like pushing by them. And it was really, and I asked for a CRO who actually was witnessing it all happening and very quickly acknowledged that it was a bad scene and never should have happened. But I was so furious that I put a post on Facebook, mostly because the airline would not respond to my many messages, just asking for confirmation that we would have a dignified flight back when we came home. Mm-hmm. They were I wasn't getting anywhere. So I said, I'm going to do it. So I put it out there. And I was really amazed at how many private messages I received from people who say, I really want to take my son here. I really want to get my mother here, but I'm afraid to. I don't want to do it. I just can't imagine, can you help me? That is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. The thought that people would keep from traveling because of the fear of either being disrespected or their equipment damaged is just awful. So, that's why I say, it's easy to say, well, I'm just not going to do anything about it, because so many things happen. You have to pick your battles, right? Sure. But I think this is a battle that every single person who has any type of mobility equipment and wants to fly in a dignified manner, I think you have to constantly put that complaint in, let them know that it's happening. Because if 1,000 people put in complaints, but 10,000 people should have put in complaints, it doesn't look like it's bad as it is.
It's crazy to think, with the tens of thousands or millions of people that fly on a regular basis, what's a disabled complaint? 1% will just assign a number, right? And so I would imagine these airline executives and leaders and people in charge, they're like, they're just writing them off because it's such a small number. But when you talk about those folks that reach out and say, hey, we really want to go do this or go here, but we're afraid, we're anxious, it's overwhelming, those are legitimate feelings that can paralyze a family. Mm-hmm. And when you think about those, we'll just say executives who have children, they would never want their own family to feel that level of anxiety or nervousness or fear. And so they would do whatever it takes to make sure their kids don't feel that. But when it comes to serving the public in the manner that they have chosen to do, as public as in consumers, the people that pay their paychecks in a sense, they write us off. And Or they write some people off. I don't want to say yes because I know you're in a whole nother league than I am with power chairs and whatnot. But it's sad that because we're a small group or we're small in numbers, not a whole lot gets done.
Mm-hmm. And I really do think a lot of people either say, well, why? What's going to happen? What's going to change? I don't,
Sure.
it happens all the time. And, I'm the last flight we had trouble getting on that. Then we got into our airport. They could not find Alex's wheelchair. They couldn't find it. So there was a lot of stress involved because the crew can't get off the plane and we couldn't get off the plane so we sat on the plane for 55 minutes. Jeez. And the transfer crew, which by the way is actually part of baggage, if you didn't know, which is interesting, but they were really trying to get us off the plane and into one of those like really flimsy wheelchairs. And I had to explain that Al has a spinal fusion and she needs her chair to be able to be safe. And the woman turned around and said, well, I don't know why you travel with these chairs anyway. And so there were about seven. There was the pilot, the co-pilot, and about 5 flight attendants. And everybody just kind of went silent. Because, that one statement well, you travel with your legs. So I don't know what you don't understand. But it took them 50 minutes to find Alex's wheelchair.
My blood is starting to boil. Mm-hmm. And you've only shared 2 stories.
I'm telling you, so many. Yeah. So, that's why I think, yes, maybe it is a small group, people with disabilities, but I feel like it can be a mighty group. And if 100%. We instill in each other that it is a good thing to speak up, maintain a level of dignity. Sure. We bring duct tape with us whenever we travel with Sam so that we can quickly.
Of course.
No, it's an essential travel piece of equipment. Yeah.
Al is, Al takes it all in and she can remain calm, but Sam just has no patience for it. So, but, I feel like as long as you stay calm and dignified, but say to yourself, no, I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to invoke my rights, which means I want a complaint resolution officer to come down here and hear me out. And we held up that one incident where they called Sam. We held up a full plane and they were so unhappy, but I'm really sorry that happened. Yeah. But that's the way it goes.
That's what you got to do.
Imagine how we feel. So you are furious that your plane can't take off because we are standing in the jetway talking to a complaint resolution officer about what happened, and what didn't have to happen.
I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but the airline is losing a lot of money in that moment because they're paying extra fees to be at the jetway that long, and they're pissing off, not they, but a lot of people are getting upset and they're going to demand a refund. It's just, it would be so much easier for everybody involved if we go back to the very early on conversation, if airlines would just get it right the first time or, learn from their opportunities or mistakes, it would be so much better, not only for you and I, but for them as well. It would just make more sense.
And they can get other things right. Why is it they can't get this right?
Yeah. Or why are they choosing not to? It's not that hard.
I get stuck in this mindset that it's my fault. I'm putting upon others because I need help. And I think that's partly what keeps me from standing up for myself sometimes.
I don't think that's an unusual feeling, Kyle. I really don't. I think it's hard when you feel like you're asking for too much, because I'm the same way. Like, am I asking for too much? But I think you just have to muster up the strength and realize that you aren't asking. You're as important as the person next to you, and you deserve that same respect.
Mary, I know you said you're not an expert, so I'm going to ask a question that you may or may not know the answer to, and that's fine. But in your experience, when you're talking to the CRO or the complaint resolutions officer, is that somebody that works for the airline or the airport or the overall association of does every airline have their own?
I believe, and I can find this out, but I believe every airline has a CRO. If they can't come to you in person, they have to talk to you over the phone. So in some manner, they have to produce either a supervisor or a CRO.
And immediately? That plane doesn't leave until a CRO shows. I mean, theoretically speaking, is that the way it's supposed to be?
I believe that's true. I believe they have to produce either in person or by phone to address the issue.
Sure.
Because that flight out of New York, it did not leave until we had exchanged names, contact, procedure, everything. She ended up being very thorough. And this, the same thing in New Haven, the CRO, as I said, happened to be out there on the plane. So, she was a designated person with the airline to address the problem. And I do know that if I've never had an instance where CRO didn't come to us in person, but I do believe that if they can't get to you in person, at least has to be contact by phone. I mean, hey, you know me, I'll just lay down on the jetway.
Yep. Your tenacity knows no bounds.
Yeah,
I love that.
It's always easier to advocate for someone else. Sure. And I think my feeling is I am so appalled because I know what it's like to fly invisible, as an able-bodied person. So I don't, so I'm always checking that, this shouldn't happen. Yeah. And honestly, I've stood up for other people when I've flown alone before. I saw them.
Yeah, I can see that. You're a woman of principle, and I value that.
Oh, thanks. We can do better. That's my favorite thing the airports are always apologizing. It's stop apologizing. We don't do it anymore. Okay, you apologize 100 times. We can do better. We can all do better.
Mary, I see and you've even forwarded me a couple of these emails about invitations for public comment on air travel for people with disabilities, and there seems to be a lot of these things now. There was a article in the New York Times that I read, and it just seems to be a hot topic right now, and it seems like the airlines are under a little pressure. Is that how you see it? I mean, is there a swell of advocacy at this moment?
Want my theory?
Yeah.
Theory. Secretary Buttigieg. Talk about someone with principle and value. I think he's amazing. And there was just a full day meeting. That's probably what you read about in the Times. The Department of Transportation did a whole meeting on air travel for people with wheelchairs. And we logged on the whole day. Yeah. And it started with Secretary Buttigieg. And he was so inspiring. And, he said many of the problems today are because of attitudinal barriers. And I'll never forget that he said that. We can all do better. We have to stop with those attitudinal barriers.
It's not like we don't have the resources or the equipment or right? It's just how people behave.
He's the Secretary of Transportation, Department of Transportation. So that's trains. It's a whole nother show about trains. So, I just feel like he has the right vision and the right principle and value to at least look at it. I can't ever remember a whole day meeting for people who travel on airplanes with wheelchairs. And there were some wonderful speakers. I could see if I can find the link. It's probably was recorded. Yeah. It was a great meeting.
Recognizing that there's a pretty good atmosphere because of leadership right now, what would be your hope that you could tell everyone who's listening?
My advice would be, don't let anybody keep you from going anywhere or doing anything. Muster up the strength, get out there, get on planes, do your homework, follow the rules. And it's all spelled out on, the Department of Transportation, what your responsibility should be, what the airline's responsibility should be, and get out there and travel and speak up if you have to speak up. Be respectful, and eventually things have got to change. Yes. Unless we get out there, meeting people with disabilities, if you don't get out there and you don't do what you want to do, it will just never get any better.
I love that you said early on that your advocacy, it's going to help change the environment for somebody down the road. It may not be something that you benefit from right away, but think about those travelers 5, 10, 20 years from now and what could be in place because enough people rallied, enough people filed their complaint, enough people with the right attitude called attention to a significant opportunity in the system.
Yes, you have just as much a right as everybody else to be out there traveling. And don't ever let anybody think you don't.
In the spirit of your last comment, Sean, my takeaway from this conversation is something you said, Mary. There might be 1,000 complaints to represent the 10,000 incidents. And it's our responsibility, like Sean, you were pointing out to the next person, to make our voices heard because that's how change is going to be made.
Well put.
Well, Mary, we could talk about this for 3-4 hours. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate it. And thank you for all your advocacy in our lives. I mean, you have affected so many lives.
Yeah, you have.
It's remarkable.
Yeah. Everybody knows Mary.
That's right.
And
thank you.
I'm honored to have you on today, and of course, honored that I know you. So,
thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
Remember, we found your little computer.
Oh, do I? Yeah, I sure do. In fact, we had during RAM, I used the Garmin on my bike, and at one point it was gone. It probably fell off in the transfer of hooking it back up on the car or whatever, and I was not in a good place without it. And Mary and Felicia driving the GoPro vehicle. They went on a hunt, and you're talking
tiny,
it's the size of an Apple Watch today, maybe a tiny bit bigger, but it's
miles.
It's not going to be easy to find, but they found it. And the fact that they even said, let's try to find it is impressive.
So it was just laying on the side of the road?
No, it was off the road in some grass.
Yeah.
I don't know how we found it.
That's incredible.
It must have flown.
Mary, keep this in mind. You gave the 4 of us riders, and maybe the crew, I don't remember, but at least the 4 of us, you gave us all a little cross. And I still have that on my race jersey. And in fact, our teammate, Mike Malott, I saw him a couple years ago, and he mentioned still wearing his. So You're a sweetheart, and we love having you not only in our life, but in our corner.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Have a good day.
You too, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Sean, you can see why Mary was my first call when all of this went down, just to get my head straight and figure out how to approach it. She is a force, and I'm so grateful that she was able to come on and share with us today.
And to me, it's obvious. We are barely scratching the surface. I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to add to this particular topic as the years go by. And I would assume with Mary's work and effort, she's going to guide us a little bit more moving forward.
All right, Sean, time to move on to thank you notes. We both recognize that gratitude helps keep us on track. So who do you have to thank today?
I'm saying thank you to my brother Philip, who you've met, you've ridden with him a couple times, or at least he's been a part of events and rides that we've done. I recently visited my mom for her birthday. She lives in southern Nevada, not too far from Vegas. And my brother is a 4-hour drive from his hometown. And he made it a point to come out and spend the same weekend that I was there. So it was kind of fun for my mom. She had all 3 of her boys there. And it was the first time Philip was able to make that trip and see her place and help her on the house a little bit. So it was just a fun couple days with family. And I'm thankful that Philip made it work for his busy schedule and calendar and just made it a special birthday weekend for my mom.
Beautiful. I like it. Whenever we would go on vacation as a family, my mom always had to stop at any church that was in town. So we could tour the church and see all the old paintings and all this stuff. Well, my dad and my mom took a vacation to Europe, and that's where they are right now.
Oh, wow.
And the other day, she sent me photos of these old paintings and this biggest organ in the world. They were there for an organ concert. And I found myself starting to get emotional. Looking at these pictures, like, this is what my mom loves. She's doing what she loves the most. And I was just so happy for them in that moment. So just gratitude that my parents are experiencing what they like to do. They've been married 48 years.
Jeez,
and
that's amazing.
They are enjoying Europe together.
Congratulations, Mike and Diane. What an incredible history and legacy, and was something we can all be grateful for, right? Because we get the benefit of Kyle and everything else that's coming out of the Bryant household.
This episode was brought to you in part by Horizon Therapeutics. Please visit www.rareiscommunity.com for more information. Thank you to Mary Caruso for sharing all of her insights and encouragement today. Check out our show notes for the links that Mary talked about on the show. Please share this episode with a friend if you like what you hear. We look forward to talking to you next week. Until then, keep living with urgency. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.